Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GoDaddy Pro Meetup. We are here with Joshua Hammer, who works with Securi. So we're bringing you security information from security sources. We have been focusing all month on security, so I'm glad that we get to wrap it up with this event. But Joshua, I'm going to let you take it from here and give us a little intro and teach us something new.
I will do my best. Hey, everybody, my name is Joshua Hammer. I'm the Sales Operations Manager over at Securi. A little bit about me. I've been with Securi now for actually it's closer to 5 years. I'm the Sales Operation Manager. I'm married. I've got 2 little girls who drive me insane, and I love games, board games, video games. I even look at security kind of like a game. So hopefully we have some fun, and we'll get started. So I wanted to start out with just some core concepts because it's hard to understand how to secure your site without understanding how the site gets attacked. So one of the core concepts we're talking about is an attack surface. When you set up, you go out, you purchase your domain, you point the DNS to your host, and then you install WordPress. At this point, the world can now see that WordPress, which means that attackers can also see that WordPress. So it's all automated. They start throwing attacks at you. Okay, and right now all you've got is this simple site, and most of the attacks are not going to hit that attack surface. But we're a business, right? We want to stand out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install a theme. So we're increasing that attack surface. So now our website has a theme. It stands out a little, but we want to start getting information from a customer. So we're going to add a forms plugin. We're increasing our attack surface even more. And maybe the forms plugin isn't enough. We want our people to be able to talk to us on the website, so we're going to add a forms plugin. And on top of that, of course, we've got SEO, so we need to add the SEO plugin. And we want to sell stuff, so we've got WooCommerce that we're adding. And you know what? Our host is fantastic. They let us have a ton of different sites. And I've been playing this video game, so I want to create a site for the video game. So I'm going to add a second site. And of course, on that site, I want to have forums so I can talk to my other friends that are playing that game. So let's add the forums. And then we're out there and we're like, hey, you know what? We've got this huge promotion going on. I'm going to buy this other domain, and I'm going to make a web page for this domain. It's just a static page, though. So we're going to add another site. As you can see now, the different attacks that wouldn't have hit just that WordPress site now start hitting that target because the attack surface is larger. There's more areas of opportunity for that attack to hit. And this is a concept that we're going to keep coming back to as an attack surface. The second concept I want to share is what we call the principle of least privilege. And what this is only assigning users the privilege that they need to get whatever the job is that they are doing done. See, if we give a WordPress user as a contributor, all they can do is create a post. They can't even publish it. They can edit their own post and they can delete their own post. If a contributor gets hacked, they can't really do much to your site because all they can do is mess with their own posts. Well, if we bump that up and we say we're going to make them an author, now the author can create and publish the post. Of course, they can edit and delete their own post as well, but they can also upload media files, which means that we can start uploading malicious files if this person got hacked. If we made the person an editor and the editor gets hacked, not only can they do everything the author can do, but they can also moderate comments, so they can start allowing spam comments in there, and they can also manage categories and links, so they can start redirecting people to other sites, which is no fun. And maybe you've created the site and you just want to make it easy and you made everybody an administrator. Any person that gets hacked that's an administrator can do everything the editor do, but they can also edit the code, delete other users, and manage plugins and themes. They can basically completely take control of that site. And if you're using a multi-press setup where you can have several sites under one WordPress installation, then you have a super admin and they can control what sites are in there as well. Can you all still hear me? Because I just got a loud beep and it's telling me my headset shut off. Hopefully you can still hear me. So now that we've gone into a few of these practices, let's take a look at the inventory. We need to know what's going on. What do we have that we need to protect? We've got a hosting account here. And for this example, I just put in 2 sites, and each site has 2 plugins. And then we've got users, how many users on each site and what their roles are. The inventory is important so we know the size of the attack surface. And if we keep this up to date, we can always know exactly what's going on. One of a common signs of an attack is you start getting new users with new roles inside of the site. So having this inventory, even post-attack, is helpful so you can know, okay, well, this user is supposed to be here, this user is not. I can't tell you how many times we come across people who post-attack, we tell them to clean up their user list, and they have no clue what users are supposed to be in there and which ones aren't. So even something as simple as taking inventory of the site is an important step of applying security to the site. Step 2, secure yourself. XKCD, I love the comic. It's kind of highbrow humor, but they did a fantastic one on passwords. And there's a lot of little things here, but basically, it sums it up at the bottom. Through 20 years of effort, we have successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for computers to guess. So that first password that he has put in there, Troubadour N3, if a computer was attacking it at 1,000 guesses per second, it would take about 3 days for the computer to find that password. Okay. The second one in there, which is correct horse battery staple, it would take the same computer at 1,000 guesses per second, 550 years to guess that password. So a longer password is better. Longer passwords are harder for a computer to figure out, even if they are a bunch of just nonsense words. Now, another thing about passwords that we hear all the time is forcing users to change password on a regular basis is a great idea. Every company is guilty of this, and we all love it. And you know what? It is complete BS. Because this starts users doing the wonderful passwords. For example, I remember back in the old days, my password was HammerJ1. Right? Last name, first initial, and a number. And then when I needed to change the password again, it became HammerJ2, then HammerJ3. And then they said, hey, you need to have a symbol in there. So it became HammerJ explanation point 1. It doesn't set up a good precedent for passwords. And requiring them to change means that people have to constantly try to remember that new password. So that's why we recommend actually using a password manager such as LastPass. Today, I could not tell you any of my passwords. I just couldn't do it. Without my password manager, I would be completely lost. LastPass is the one that I use. To give you an idea, LastPass has been hacked in the past. However, they keep everything encrypted. A supercomputer would take about 500 years to unencrypt a single password that was in their system. So a lot easier to change your passwords within the first 500 years after a hack at LastPass than it is to change your password if it was Hammer J1, how many sites did I use that on? I really don't know. So what do I do? And to give you an example of LastPass, a password from LastPass would look something like this. And that's why I couldn't tell you what any of my passwords were, because they're all completely random. Every site has a different password. And so if my user site at GameStop got hacked, they couldn't use the same login at my bank. But that's a common attack thing is, hey, here's a list of all these people with their email addresses and the passwords they've used. So step 2, have an update plan. Updates are scary. I know this. Everybody hates updates. They are important though, so you got to have a plan. And the reason they're important is because basically what an update is a security update is, hey, we have this security vulnerability, and this security vulnerability is having an issue because people are exploiting it, so we need to patch this. So they patch it, and that's what the security update's there for. But the second thing a security update does is now announces to the world at whole, hey, there's a security problem right here. And if the person doesn't have this update, this will work on their site. So if you're not updating your site, you've basically said, hey, guess what? My site's vulnerable right here. Come and hit it. So what do? Well, we can have a staging site, right? A site that's on a different server that's exactly the same as our site so that we can apply the updates to the staging site and make sure that the staging site doesn't break so that when we apply the updates to the real site, we know it's safe. How often do you check for updates? Do you have a weekly check, a daily check, a monthly check? It's something that you should be aware of because updates happen daily. Now, am I saying that you need to check your updates daily? Well, as a security expert, I'm going to tell you yes. But as somebody who is lazy, I'm not going to check for updates every day. Let's be honest. I've got more important things to do. So I've got to have some sort of plan for checking on updates on a regular basis. And I've got to know what happens to the site during the time between the update is released and the updating the site. So if I'm only checking once a month and it takes me a week of testing on the staging site, my regular site is now vulnerable for 5 weeks during that time. What are we going to do during that 5 weeks to protect the site? Because that site is now vulnerable during that period. So what we do is we implement a firewall. There's a couple of types of firewalls out there. There's cloud-based and server-side firewalls. Both have benefits. I'm going to point you more towards a cloud-based firewall versus a server-side firewall. The reason for this is a cloud-based firewall is using its own resources to protect your site. A server-side firewall is now using your server's resources to protect the site. Think about it this way. Somebody comes in and they make 1,000 requests of your site in the last second. Would you rather those 1,000 requests be handled by your server or by somebody else's server? Which one's going to slow down your computer more? Probably the one on your server. Yeah. Self-managed versus hiring someone. You can create your own firewall. However, there's a lot of rules that you need to put in place for your firewall. And I can't go through every single rule out there. I'm going to recommend that you hire somebody who does this for a living, whether it be us at Sukori, your host, or somebody else, because it's a full-time job just to watch the attacks that are out there. How is the firewall set up? Is it installing a plugin? Or are you changing your DNS? Or are you pointing a name server somewhere else? These are all questions you need to figure out when you're setting up the firewall. And what do I look for in a firewall? Well, firewalls, the first thing that comes to mind is they're going to slow down my site. because now all the traffic has to go through this firewall before it hits the server and gets to my site, and we don't want that. So does the firewall have a CDN aspect included? All firewalls will have a CDN aspect included. Now the question is the CDN the primary, or is security the primary? That depends on each firewall. So at Security, we're going to tell you security is our primary, but we also have a CDN to help speed up the site. Security is always going to be first, though. What does the firewall block? Does it block just signatures? Or is it a smart firewall that looks for And what about geo-blocking? If I'm in a US person and I'm 100% based in the US, do I really need people in India logging into my site? Maybe I let them view it, but they can't do any post requests. Once again, I'm minimizing that attack vector. I'm lowering the area of attack because now nobody in India could attack my site. So geo-blocking could be very useful in implementing firewall and security. Okay, we've got the firewall set up, and the firewall is patching and everything, so it's protecting our site. What about monitoring? So how do we want to do monitoring? There's free plugins out there that can monitor your site, but you got to look at what are you monitoring for. Are you looking at file changes? That's important, right? If I didn't do an update and all of a sudden all my file sizes changed, probably something wrong there. Am I on any block list? Is Google blocking me? Is McAfee blocking me? Downtime, I can monitor for that if my site goes down. What about signs of compromise? Might be a good thing to monitor. And how is that monitoring set up? Is it another plugin? Is it a remote scanner? Or is it server side? A remote scanner, you could look at it this way. You've got your house, right? And somebody's broke into your house and they're stealing stuff. A remote scanner is kind of like the cops looking in through the front window. If they see the crook, they go, okay, hey, there's something wrong there. But if the crook is in the back room, they're not going to see him. Whereas a server-side scanner is going to look in every single room of the house. So a server side is going to be a lot more effective, but may take up more resources. So it's something to keep in mind. And then finally, backups. How are you doing your backups? There are plenty of plugins out there that'll do backups for you. I want to stress that it should be an off-site backup, meaning you shouldn't keep your backups on your hosting server, because if your hosting server gets hacked, then your backups are hacked, right? How often are you backing up? The backups are going to be important if you're trying to recover after an attack, and how much information are you going to lose if you're not backing it up every day? And how long do you keep those backups? Do I only keep one backup in the back end? I've seen hacks where the people have come in, installed malware on the server, and the malware is time delayed. So it waits 2 months before it attacks the server. And the reason it does that is because it wants to be in your backup, so that when you restore, you're restoring the malware too. So there are things to keep in mind. And one more bonus security concept for you, functional isolation. You're going to hear this a lot when you're talking to somebody who's securing websites. It's called cross-site contamination. Each site should have its own hosting account or file structure. The reason for this is if any one site on your hosting account is out of date, that's the door into your entire hosting account. Doesn't matter if you have a firewall on your main site. If I can get into your old site that you never touch anymore, I now have access to everything on that server. So your attack surface, we already know about that target. But when you compare that with the updates and the vulnerability, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So we've heard the old adage, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I'm going to tell you, don't put all of your websites in one hosting account. I'm not saying you have to go to a different host for every account. You could open multiple hosting accounts at one host. And yes, I know that adds price and cost. But if one site gets hacked, do you know the cost of cleaning one site versus 10 sites? The amount is staggering. So it's something to think about. It's something that you're going to hear a lot of people talk about, functional isolation. This should only be one egg in that basket to make sure that basket is safe. Whether or not people do it, that's on you. But it's just a bonus concept I wanted to throw out there. There was a lot of meat, and I went through it really fast, so please, if you have any questions, ask them now. I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me see if we have any questions in the chat at all. I don't see any. I think the biggest question that I try to ask all of our speakers is if there is one first step that people should take, what would be that key first step?
I'm sorry, I'm having audio issues.
Yes, I
Can you hear
can.
me?
If there is one first step that people should take, because it's a lot of information, and it seems overwhelming. So, like that very first thing that people should do that makes the whole process a little less overwhelming.
Really, to be honest with you, I'm going to tell you to throw money at it, right? So there is. I had a boss once who told me, you can spend time to save money or you can spend money to save time. Can't do both. Okay, so what's more important to you? Hiring a security expert that knows a lot about what's going on is going to save you a lot of time, but it is going to cost you money. So you want to make things simpler for yourself, hire someone. If you don't, then it's going to be a nice time management skill of going through, figuring out what you've got, how you're going to protect it, and what's the cheapest way to do so.
That makes sense for sure. Well, I want to thank you for all of this information. And we have recorded this. This will live on the GoDaddy Pro YouTube, as well as on the page on the event site.
Fantastic.